Like that?
Hookers and drug dealers and like never a dull moment.
Let me play my part.
Check 2, hey.
Like, is that real? Did that happen? Like,
The structure of your brain actually changes.
and do you still feel that every day?
And then it got time for guitars.
Eating disorder, like
I didn't want to die,
tendencies.
but I didn't want to live either.
Helpless little girl.
You gotta go in the hospital.
You feel powerless because the body has a fear reaction.
The opportunity to empower.
No one can take away my power.
I won't take myself out.
Artists that are true like that, those are the ones that tend to
Like a sin.
create change.
Well, I found my teaser clip. On stage with Derek Abrams.
Right. Never a dull moment. Never, ever. I guess another really funny one would be we were in a place called Barrington, Illinois, playing a really cool club. It's an old roadhouse called the Penny Road Pub in Barrington, Illinois. And we were playing this place, and the hotel that the club put us up in was just a shithole.
Yeah.
And it was covered in hookers and drug dealers and like, you know, kind of like just north of Chicago in a nice area, but just far enough out of town where this hotel could house all of the seediest characters, including the band that was playing at the bar that night. And I have never in my entire life been propositioned by more drug dealers and hookers in a place ever. And there was one of them that even said, I'm not even kidding you. She says, I have dentures. It will be the best you've ever had.
Oh!
Yeah. That's shit you can't unhear, you know?
No, you can't unhear that.
No,
Shop and donate generously at kellynicolefoundation.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think any guest is going to top that with their road stories.
I don't know.
So what do you do the next morning when you're like, okay, this is what I do for a living?
Exactly.
Pick up the sticks and play, I guess.
Exactly. Yep. I'll never forget that one. One.
So back to the music. I'm curious if you ever picked up any other instruments. Like everyone can play a guitar a little bit.
I can play guitar enough to be dangerous. I mean, it's nothing any good, but I can certainly sometimes kind of convey an idea that I have to a guitar player. I mean, that's kind of one of the really important things about being a musician is just being able to communicate with other musicians and collaborate. And that can be a tough barrier, especially when you're in a new band, like trying to just learn how everybody likes to communicate musically. And that's one of the things that I try to strive for is to be able to communicate with a bass player or a singer or a guitar player or a keyboard player, just to have a common ground where we can all speak to one another. But I mean, I can't play piano at all. I can sort of play bass. Like I can sort of play guitar.
Yeah.
I cannot sing at all. I was told very early.
You never done a scream vocal that made it to a final track?
No. It was, I was told very early on that I do not have a very good voice, and I took it to heart and just said, I'm just going to play the drums. It's cool. Yep.
Jeez. I think drumming is so hard.
It is, but at the same time,
I can't separate my right hand and my right foot, like do an offbeat with a kick. No, it's not happening. If it's not a downbeat, it's not happening with my right foot.
It just takes practice. It just takes practice.
That's what they say. They say. Well,
and a lot of it.
Did Fluff tell you he's on the album too? In fact, with you, because he screams on Needing More and screams crazy.
Oh yeah.
And,
yes.
Yeah, that's him. So he's the backup vocalist, if you want to call it that.
Awesome. Yeah, he's got backing vocals on that one. Locked down.
Locked it down for sure. So wow. Okay, 2005. So what was your first impression when Fluff sat down and like was telling you what the foundation was going to be? Obviously everything had just happened with her life and stuff. But knowing that she was going to be now this legacy that helped other people, what was kind of your first thought thinking back to your friendship with her?
my first thought about it was that that's excellent. That's something that should certainly happen, just because she's definitely one of those talents that didn't get to do enough when it would have been great that she could have, got out and really done it on her own. Mm-hmm. But now that the foundation's here, I think that's one of those excellent things that it allows for that to happen for her and for everyone that hasn't had a chance to hear the album or haven't had a chance to see the documentary. Now it's just I think it's great, because I do believe she deserves that.
I would hope so. I mean, you've played with her. Obviously, I was there in her life, but not the type of person that would ever be in a band with her. Although she did ask me once, will you sing backup at local gigs? And I was just terrified. Like, what did she just say? These are not stock harmonies. This isn't the Beatles. Like, these are some tricky harmonies. I don't know if she really means that. It didn't happen. We ran out of time, but I mean, who wants to wake up to divorce papers the next morning after a gig, right? Like, yeah. So thinking back to making music with her, did you guys gig together, or were you just in the studio?
Just in the studio. It was one of those things where we were going to try to put something together, and for me, it was I was at the time working with 2 other projects, and she was kind of trying to get things put together, and it's just one of those things where it was almost there, right up to before she passed away, but it was almost there. Almost, and then she ended up getting really sick. Yeah,
that part I do remember. You were almost on the, if there was a Hate Becoming tour now, you came close to us hiring you to be on it, so that would have been epic.
Yeah.
I'm always, whenever I see like an Instagram feed like yours or anything music related and see that sea of people, I just picture, her on stage with just this huge grin and Hate Becoming just thumping out of the speakers. I feel like she would have just annihilated at the highest levels,
Yeah. Yep. It had potential and still could, the music itself could definitely find its way onto our radio station easily.
Yeah.
And
it's
do
been
just
on a
fine.
few local ones. Yeah, for sure.
Great.
So what's your impression of do you think Ministry fans would dig her album on iTunes and Spotify if they checked it out?
Yeah. I mean, Ministry fans are of some of the most open-minded music fans that I've met. Yeah. What's great is like the thing that I really like about Ministry is that with our management and with Al, they do a really, really good job of coming up with bands that are going to come on and open the show on tours. And we've had some bands that, they're not necessarily metal bands, and they're not necessarily any type of like specific genre style band. Like the first tour I did with Ministry, we had a band, it's kind of an experimental hip hop group called Death Grips, opened up the show. And I mean, they had their own fans that they brought with to the shows, as well as our fans that would come to the show. And the way the crossover happened was fascinating, because it would seem that a lot of the Ministry fans would absolutely fell in love with Death Grips, and the Death Grips fan fell in love with us. So it was a great win of the tour. And then the next tour, we had a group called Chelsea Wolf opening the show, and they're more of kind of a dirge. Like if you've ever heard Susie and the Banshees, they're heavily influenced by that. Like it's Chelsea Wolf fronts the band, and they're very like they down tune and they have very slow, kind of almost haunting vocals, and it's really cool, and it doesn't sound anything like a band that you would expect that would be opening for Ministry. And again, it was the same thing. Like she brought her own fans, and we had our fans, and they all basically it was one of those things where I noticed that Ministry fans, when they get something handed to them to listen to, they're gonna listen to it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I love that about our fans. I love that.
I think that's the cool way to do like an opening band, not just to have like a Ministry Junior or another version of yourself who wishes they were you, but like, okay, you guys like this? Now check this out,
Exactly. And that to me, that makes a good concert. Like some of my favorite bands I like to go see live. The bands that are opening for them they're never like you said, like that band's junior version of them. It's never like that. There's always a good mix of music to listen to that's going to keep you interested for sometimes you're there for 4 or 5 hours. If you're there to hear the same style of music for 4 or 5 hours, it gets old.
For sure.
Yeah, got to change it up.
That's the thing about blues concerts. Like, I love the blues and Stevie Ray Vaughan and stuff like that is kind of what I grew up listening to. But man, it comes a time when you can't hear that chord progression one more time or you're going to kill someone.
Exactly.
It's just too much of a good thing sometimes.
Yeah.
So as a drummer, can you talk a little bit about the difference between the technical chops and the economy of motion and all that versus like the feel and the emotional, intuitive side of playing an instrument and being an expressive artist?
Absolutely. Like economy of motion and stuff like that. Those are all things that you kind of learn them, because you kind of have to. And, but actually, the most important thing that I always tell like students that I've had in the past is like, you've really just got to learn when to shut up and listen to what's happening around you. And that's when you can really start to express and convey feeling behind the drums, is through dynamics and really just listening to what everybody else is doing and complimenting what they're doing on stage. We're like, drummers are not melody makers. We are rhythm makers. So if what we're doing doesn't make the melody makers feel good, then there's a disconnect somewhere. So it's imperative that, drummers aren't just listening to themselves. They're listening to what the bass player's laying down. They're listening to what the guitar players are doing. And heaven forbid that you ever trample like a vocal line. That's like the biggest no-no.
God.
Yeah, that's the biggest no-no when playing the drums. Like if the vocalist is singing something, you're not playing a fill,
Yeah. That's, as Kel would say back in Tofist Studios, don't step on my nuts.
Yeah. That's the best way to put it.
Someone else. You got a backup vocalist in back.
Yeah, I got a backup vocalist. His name is Wedge. He's our tour manager.
Yeah, that's exactly what she used to sell. Or even with like a snare fill jumping over the top of a guitar lick. Like, hey, stay off my junk. This is my section. Make space for the band, So that part's interesting to me, is like, I wonder how many musicians like who are maybe just learning, who think it's all about how fast I can play and how impressive and how technical, and
right.
They don't realize it's about listening and making the vocalist sound like a rock star, that your job is to make someone else sound good. Like, how many people never really get that?
A lot. I think the big test to that is whether or not, where they are in their career, if they're just listening to themselves, or if they're spending more time listening to what else is going on and actually creating music, as opposed to just trying to, for lack of another term, like blow chops and try to scratch in the most notes as you possibly can. It's just the proof is in the pudding with it. Like if you're playing to clubs with 500 people in them, or if you're playing in a club with 1,000 people in there, that says something. If people want to hear what you're doing, then that obviously means that there's something going on between all the people on stage musically.
Yeah, for sure. That magic, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that was kind of unique about Kel's guitar work, you probably picked up on this pretty quickly, was that, like, she had chops, and she always told me she didn't. She was like, oh, I'm more of an emotional player. And then I heard stuff from the late 90s, like, oh, fuck you can play anything. And she was just like shredding up and down and tapping and doing whatever. But she was like, okay, but you outgrow the showboat stuff and you learn how to play one note like it really matters.
Yes, that's so true. I would have to go back and say that's it. The more I could reiterate, just listening and making sure, like, if you were going to play your last note like it was your last note ever, I think what I would do is I would make sure to play something that was extremely, extremely tasteful. In fact, maybe even not even play it. Just let it go. You know what I mean?
Wow. That was deep. The notes that you don't play are sometimes the most surprising, right? Like in jazz, especially.
Oh, absolutely. Some of my favorite drum fills are when the drums aren't playing. You know, that even says more.
Get the music behind the mission. Hate Becoming by Kelly Nicole on iTunes and Spotify.
If you guys haven't checked out the merch table,
join the movement.
Buy the album.
Get your Kelly Nicole band merch and donate what you can at kellynicolefoundation.org.
Courage is from Amplified!